Welcome back to Newsday. President Biden has made an impassioned speech in defense of American democracy whilst also launching a scathing attack on his predecessor. He said Donald Trump and those that embraced his Make America Great Again motto represented a form of extremism that threatens U.S. life. Speaking in Philadelphia in a primetime address, President Biden said there is no place for political violence, and he called on all Americans to come together to defend democracy, regardless of their ideology. The president's comments come 8 weeks before crucial midterm elections.
But there's no question that the Republican Party today is dominated, driven, and intimidated by Donald Trump and the MAGA Republicans. And that is a threat to this country. We, the people, will not let anyone or anything tear us apart. Today, there are dangers around us we cannot allow to prevail. We here, you've heard it, more and more talk about violence as an acceptable political tool in this country. It's not. It can never be an acceptable tool. So I want to say this plain and simple. There is no place for political violence in America, period. None, ever. For a long time, we've told ourselves that American democracy is guaranteed, but it's not. We have to defend it, protect it, stand up for it, each and every one of us. That's why tonight, I'm asking our nation to come together, unite behind the single purpose of defending our democracy regardless of your ideology.
For more on this, we can cross live and speak to Arise U.S. correspondent Eric Ham, who joins us from Washington. Eric, thanks so much for joining us on Newsday. Now, why is President Biden choosing to launch such a scathing attack on Donald Trump at this time?
Well, he's doing it because we're less than 70 days out before the midterm elections. And what we're seeing right now is the president of the United States making this not only a referendum on fascism versus democracy, but many are looking at this as potentially a referendum on Donald Trump versus Joe Biden. And so we're seeing now in very stark, very clear terms where this race is going to be fought at and what issues are going to drive this election. This will not be about inflation, crime, jobs, immigration. This is going to be about democracy versus fascism. And that is the lane that the president is now staking out with this primetime speech that he gave last night, where he called out what he calls MAGA Republicans for not doing more to uphold democracy. And we saw this not just last night, but we saw this 2 days ago when the president spoke again on the issue of crime, saying that Republicans cannot support the insurrectionists of January 6th, but also say they support law enforcement. He said you cannot do it. And so clearly what we're seeing here is the president is calling out what he believes to be a thread of fascism and insurrection running through the Republican Party. And he is making that the issue as we head into the final days of this race for the midterms.
And Eric, how have the Republicans responded to the president's speech?
Well, they have criticized the president for not being a unifier. Look, when President Biden ran for the office, he said that he would bring the country together. He said that he would work across the aisle with Republicans. And now what we're seeing are Republicans are criticizing him for using very stark, very harsh language and talking about Republicans. Many say that this does not move the needle in trying to unify the country and move beyond the polarization that has inflicted Washington for years now. In addition to that, they have called the president out, trying again to put this election and put the president's 2 years in office in terms of where the nation stands in terms of the economy right now, and also trying to use the inflation as a backdrop that the president has somehow failed in office, and therefore Democrats should not be in control of both chambers of Congress. And so that's where Republicans are right now. The question, of course, is, will it actually have an impact?
Well, and 8 weeks before the midterms, how do you see the race for Congress shaping up?
Well, if about 3 to 4 months ago, many saw a potential red wave that was cresting, where you would see Republicans that would take control of both the House and the Senate. Now that the Congress has passed legislation signed by the president that involves both a gun reform legislation. Recently, they just passed the Inflation Reduction Act. And of course, the president got the infrastructure bill through. President Biden's approval ratings have now been inching further and further up. And also the generic polling data that shows if Americans prefer Republicans or Democrats, that number has begun to shrink. And now it looks like it's going to be a very hard-fought race to determine the outcome of who will control the Congress. Many thought Democrats would lose handily in the election, but now, based on the polling data and in terms of what we're seeing in terms of fundraising for Democrats, this looks like this could be a very, very tight race. And oh, by the way, Donald Trump has inserted himself into this election in a much larger way. And so now this looks like this could be a referendum, not just on the Democratic Party controlled by the White House, but also on Donald Trump as well.
Well, time will only tell. Thank you so much for joining us this afternoon, Eric Ham. You're watching Newsday. Plenty more still ahead. Stay with us.